What's up, dudes? Max here, and oh man, I think you guys have been waiting for this one. So over the past week or so, I had the opportunity to go down to Riot Studios, and with several other friends and colleagues in the content creator fighting game spectrum, we were able to check out and finally play one of the most anticipated fighting games, I think, of all time, Project L. So I kind of want to go over in this video core and base impressions. They did give us some B-roll and matches to kind of highlight and show off the game. Please have this running in 4K if you possibly can to see how good the game actually looks. And yeah, I want to give you sort of a rundown of what's in the game, and then talk a bit about my impressions of the entire experience and where they could possibly be going from this point forward. So quickly covering our basis for anybody that doesn't know, Project L is no longer a 1v1 game that we first saw many years ago before 2020. It is indeed a tag team fighting game, a 2 versus 2 game specifically. And one of the most interesting things that Project L is going to be doing that hasn't been talked about too much and is going to be revealed very soon is the fact that this is a 2v2 game. And yes, there is proper duos. You can have one player controlling one character on each team and fighting each other online or offline in whatever scenario you can possibly think of. The other thing that the game does have is the ability for you to play solos versus duos. So if you want to control both characters on a team like a traditional tag team fighting game, you can. Or you can play against other people that are piloting the two characters at the same time. One person on one character and a person on the other character. So there can be a mixture between like solos and duos. If you want to carry your friend, if they're not specifically great at fighting games, this game will allow for that. This makes a lot of sense for me, and I think for anybody that's been watching my Project L videos that we've talked about it in the past, comes as kind of no surprise, because we sort of saw this in the writing on the wall. So I'm just very glad that it's here, because when it comes to 2v2 tag fighters, this is always a very fun and very welcome thing that I'm super excited for. The game is also going to be at EVO, so we're going to be seeing a lot more impressions of Project L coming very soon, which is fantastic to hear, because I'm very curious to see what other people have to say about it, because oh man, this game is mechanically dense. I'm going to start going over some of the things that are present in the game, like mechanically, and we're just going to run off everything that's there before I start giving you my overall impressions of everything. So let's start right at the beginning. It's a 2v2 game. You can tag in your partner, right? You can actively bring in your other team member. They have assists. You can choose what assists they do. Their assists between like a forward and back assist do change. And yeah, the tagging is very similar to something like Power Rangers. So if anybody's used to Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, anytime the other character's on the screen, you can actively handshake tag to that partner. There's like a nice like clapping sound, and suddenly you're in control of them while, you know, you weren't ready to be fighting that character sometimes. It's very dynamic and it's super fun, but it does take a little while to wrap your brain around it. But man, if you want to try a game that does this, I highly recommend Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. In terms of movement and mobility, it's got its like usual fare. It does have proper running in the game. So if you want to forward dash, you can dash inherently, but if you hold it, you can run. There's also backwards dashing, and there is proper wave dashing, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 style. So that's the light and medium attack at the same time, and then you press down and then light and medium down repeatedly to just have your character wave dash across the screen. It is fairly traditional when it comes to control layout and normals, where your characters are all equipped with a light, medium, and heavy attack, but they also have a tag button specifically, which is utilized for assists and allows you to obviously tag in your partner. However, it's interesting because if you hold it down, it does eventually tag in the partner, similar to something like a Marvel vs. Capcom 3. However, by default, the tag button acts as kind of like a straight launcher, and I think the only other game I can give a comparative to this to is like Street Fighter Cross Tekken, when you have that like uppercut attack that automatically tags in your other character. That's exactly what this does. There's a little bit of a mechanic tied to that, where if you do this specific attack to tag in your partner in the middle of a combo, you, I think, take away gray health of the opponent, so there is reasons to do it mid-combo. Throws is also attached to the medium and heavy, and you also get a weird ability called a critical strike, where every character can charge their heavy attack, which essentially results in a super plus on block mega heavy attack that allows you to like dash cancel in and do all this wild and stuff. There's natural anti-airs on every character with down heavy, and you can cross up while jumping with down heavy attacks as well. So they're sort of like caked in for every character. And then your basic launcher is down forward and heavy. The interesting thing about the game is that there are no special move motions. The game is 4 attack buttons technically between light, medium, heavy, and tag. And then you also have 2 other buttons, which are special 1 and then special 2. So between special 1 and special 2, every character is different. That was currently in the playable version of the game we have right now. Between all of them, yes, there wasn't the exact same amount of special attacks per character. There was an interesting amount of variety where some characters had more specials attached to what they had and follow-ups and all this stuff. So it wasn't just like, oh, we only get 2 specials per character. No, think of like forward special, neutral special, back special, like all that kind of stuff, you know? But let's get into the defense stuff, because this is where I think some of the game has very interesting design decisions. There's a lot of defensive mechanics in Project L, and one of the biggest ones is that the game does not have a traditional push block. It does have push block, but it does cost an entire bar of meter. You'll notice that there is 3 bars of meter at the bottom. That is for your supers, and it is also for your heavy defensive mechanics, like for example, push block. Push block works really good. It actually pushes away assists, which is awesome. And it does clear a lot of space, but man, is it expensive. You also have something called retreating guard, and this is with back and light and medium. This thing works like a reverse push block. So instead of like the enemy getting pushed away a whole bunch, what it does is sort of like push you away, right? It pushes your character backwards, allowing you the chance to sort of like put them at a distance where you can whiff punish them if they're throwing out too many attacks. However, it has a huge weakness. It completely loses to low attacks. So you have to be super careful of when you use this, but it is a pretty interesting tool to kind of push the opponent perfectly out of range where their follow-up attacks can then be like whiff punished and stuff like that. Here's the other crazy one. The game has a parry. It has a 1 meter parry, where if you press light and heavy at the same time, you can do a high parry and a low parries with the down and light and heavy. And it's just a straight up like parry animation that you see in something like Street Fighter 6 with a little bit of a catch window that feels like 5 to 8 frames or something like that. The crazy part about it is that if you're successful and you successfully high parry someone or low parry someone, you get all of that meter back. So it definitely is encouraging where if people are going to be autopiloting their block strings, you're going to get parried to holy hell. After a parry, they're just left acceptable. You can run in and get a full combo, all this crazy stuff. So you have to be very careful of how you do this, but there is a risk to it. This costs an entire bar of meter, and as of right now, getting meter isn't super plentiful, even though you have different meter gauges for each team member. Yeah, there's like 3 meters on one person and 2 meters on another. That is the way it currently works. There's also wake-up attacks, like auto wake-up attacks when you get up off the ground, but they didn't seem to have like upper body invulnerability. These remind me a lot of Mortal Kombat 11 sort of wake-up attacks that used your offensive/defensive meter in that game. It's kind of like that. It doesn't use anything, but on block, they're really punishable and bad, and you could kind of jump them right now. So they were only so good. They didn't seem like a universal DP or anything like that. They felt like they might need a little bit of work. Obviously, you can tech out of combos in this game. It's very similar to Guilty Gear, where a combo will essentially quote-unquote black beat, and that means that the combo wasn't tight enough or they hit stunned out. You can tech out by holding a button, very similar to a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ. And there's also a quick rise and a back roll on wake up, so there's quite a bit of defensive mechanics that the game is setting up for. And last but not least, talking about all the different offensive stuff you can do. Yes, the tag button does a default tag launcher where you can just tag in your partner mid-combo. There is assists, but it isn't just a forward assist or a back assist for, like, you know, the 2 assists your character gets. No, you can actually keep that assist button held down and run in with them. No joke, it's one of the coolest things to have, like, your character running and your assist is running as well, and you can sort of delay that assist by doing a charged assist and holding the attack. It's super sick looking. And then obviously handshake tag. We talked about how the tag stuff sort of works like Power Rangers. And then there's some pretty interesting, you know, mechanics that are there to get you back into the fight if you lose your other character. And it's called Last Stand. And it's when you're below 50% life on your last character, you get access to your assist again. Like your character didn't die completely, your secondary one. Your assist can come back and do a really, really big assist called Last Stand. And it takes a long time time to return takes like 10 seconds, but it's just something that allows you a little bit of a comeback factor if you are down a character. And the final one is dynamic save, which acts like pretty much a burst, right? Pretty much a traditional Guilty Gear burst. If you use it, it uses up this green gauge at the top of the UI, and that gauge returns over time if you're like offensive or you're getting beat up or as time progresses. This thing just blows up and, you know, the opponents go flying away, but it can be blocked, and if it is blocked, I'm pretty sure you can get a punish after in a similar fashion to something like a Guilty Gear. So there is a complete like burst bait mechanic going on here, where if you see the opponent's going to burst, you can properly do something about it if you know it's going to happen. Whew. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. That's all like the movement and offensive and defensive and tag things that are in the game. But guess what? There's actually a ton more, because before you even get to the point of a character select screen in Project L, in this current version of the game, there is an entire groove system the game sets up, which is called fuses. So these are specific gameplay mechanics that'll apply to your team that you have to choose before character select. And yes, they pretty much are like a group select in something like Capcom versus SNK 2. Let me give you an example of the 4 that are available in the game right now. One is double assist, where your assist attack can actually get a follow-up attack depending on whatever character you have, which will set up for even more daring like block strings and mix-up situations. You get something that is called double down, which acts pretty much like a delayed hyper combo in a Marvel vs. Capcom game, where if you want to like use a level 1 on a character into a level 2 of the next character, it'll allow you to properly DHC, because the game does not normally set up for that. There's also the ability to have your character be out there and throw out a super, and you can handshake tag to the other character while the super is still out. So this very much reminds me of a Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. I'm gonna mix you up while there's a big beam on the screen or something like that. That's kind of what they want it to be used for, at least what it feels that way. So that is all included in the double down sort of fuse. And then the other one is a thing called freestyle. And freestyle allows you to do handshake tag twice, meaning that you set up a mix-up, you get to the other side of the opponent, and then suddenly you're controlling the other character on the opposite side of the opponent. You throw some big combo out or some big block string into like a big move and handshake back to the other character, and you have, no shit, a Soul Stone / Marvel vs. Capcom 1 situation where the opponent is locked in between with 2 characters on each side, and you're just getting smashed to bits. If there was one moment in Project L that left me with a giddy sort of schoolgirl glee about what I'm looking at on the screen, it was freestyle with double handshake tag. I could not believe what I was looking at. And then last but not least, the least interesting fuse in my opinion, which is probably one of the most effective ones, is called Fury, and it gives you at 40% life for your character, a bonus of stats. From what I remember, it was like damage, if not allowed you to do more defense or something like that. So it was kind of like a rage mechanic for your team if you wanted that to be so. So yeah, that's okay. I think I'm actually done, right? I'm 13 minutes into this video describing the basic mechanics of Project L and going into some of my impressions of what's going on here and the roster and the characters, which is obviously like, we're going to see a lot on these characters in the roster. I probably stuck with Darius the most because he's sort of like, you know, the most like rock solid it feels. It feels like he's been in the game for a while. While Ari and Echo took a little while to get used to. Ari's kind of like, you know, the Wolverine of the game in many ways. She's got a lot of unique tools. We're going to be seeing more on these characters, and Echo's ridiculously crazy and a lot to wrap your head around, but still a pretty decent like beginner character. I don't really want to get into the individual character stuff because I feel like we're going to have a lot of opportunities to do that in the future. I just want to talk about overall impressions. And yes, from what we had played and what I just explained to you for 13 straight minutes, it's a lot, bro. There's a lot of stuff in this game that is feeling like it's directly made for fighting game players, because so many of these mechanics inherently come across as something that is for the fighting game versed. And for any of us, we see these things and you see the potential, you see the possibility, and you see where they go. And yeah, through several people at the event and through myself getting used to the control scheme of the game and everything, you start discovering stuff, and it's very fun. What they're trying to do with all of these mechanics is give you an immediate surface level depth, like absolute laundry list / kitchen sink of things that are possible. And this isn't even including the depth of the characters, where, you know, some characters all have like universal overheads and then some don't. And then some characters sort of have these things that work this certain way and then some don't, where, you know, there isn't this like sort of homogenous feel throughout every single character in the roster. There's basic combos that work for everybody for sure. However, currently in the game, there is no like, okay, so how do we ease people into it? If you mash the tag button, you don't see some cool tag thing happen and then the other character comes in. You have to manually set up for all this wild and shit, and then eventually figure out how to do supers. And yeah, every character sort of had 2 level 1 supers and a level 2 super, which acts like a big, you know, Marvel vs. Capcom level 3. So it's fascinating, and I have to say that it does take a while to sort of wrap your head around it. And as we were playing it and figuring out stuff the characters could do, I couldn't help but sort of be taken back by how intrinsically fighting game player focused all of this is. And while it is kind of refreshing to see a fighting game go completely ham on mechanics and all of this stuff, I kind of wouldn't be surprised to see some of this stuff toned down, because this is a degenerate game. It is a game where you are going to get opened up non-friggin' stop. And especially when people start getting used to this handshake tag stuff, like constantly mixing between left and right. If anybody has seen Power Rangers, bro, if you've seen how that game works and how you mix people up, it is very similar in Project L. So there's a lot of crazy mix-up opportunities that happen almost like haphazardly 3 every second, that I'm like, who's blocking this stuff, man? Who is even going to block this stuff? And yeah, you would think, okay, you got defensive mechanics though. However, in my experience, this game is like front-loaded with absolutely ballistic offense, but it does have a lot of defense, and the developers were pretty proud that there's a lot of defensive mechanics in the game. And as we went over them, yeah, there certainly is. The biggest issue I had with the defensive mechanics in Project L in its current state is that all of it is kind of expensive. Everything that you do comes with a high risk, high reward, which is fun, which is something that the majority of fighting games should have. The biggest problem with this much offense is that it feels like you sort of get rolled over pretty quick. You're either rolling over the opponent or they're rolling over you super hard every once in a while. So it can kind of feel hard to get people off of you, because not every single character has a DP or like a universal just get off me tool. You see this in a lot of other like 2v2 fighting games, Blaze Blue Cross Tag, if not a Power Ranger situation, where you get these like universal like DP, like, or get the heck out of it, like just get me out of here from this entire situation, albeit they're super unsafe on block. This game doesn't really have that. And while the retreating guard is good, it does still leave you susceptible to lows. Parries can be whiffed. The push block costs meter, and at the moment meter's kind of hard to get. So I do hope that between all the defensive mechanics that are in the game currently, that something isn't kind of high risk, high reward, because the majority of them are somewhat like high risk, high reward. I would like something at a low risk, low reward, right? Or even a high risk, low reward situation, because yeah, it feels like you get mauled sometimes, especially when you're playing against people that are pretty good. You got to really block out all of this stuff, and I don't think that the situation that Dragon Ball FighterZ was presented with, which is like this optional like parry, and then you just kind of got to block out all these wild and block strings. As much as that game is fun, I don't think that's a part of the game that is, you know, really looked upon as being like a huge positive about Dragon Ball FighterZ. I think push block is a thing that just feels good in big versus games and stuff. If not, you know, things that just push the opponent away from you in smart and advancing ways. So I'm curious what happens to push block in this game. I'm curious if the green bar at the top is eventually used for anything else. But if we're talking about all my other impressions of the game, and if we're talking about the things that I love about it, my God, dude, when you first jump in and you control these characters, they feel great. One thing that is a huge issue with team games is how they feel. And when you eventually get to all these tag mechanics and how the game functions and how specials feel and how your normals feel and do they all properly combo into really good ways. Granted, I don't think Project L is coming out anytime soon. There still is no announcement of a beta or anything like that. So the good news is that that functionality to this game from this crew making this game has nailed it. And the characters do feel really dope. I got some minor grievances with, like, you know, some special attacks don't feel super special on some characters. But for the most part, does this game feel crunchy or weird or weighted? Do I have any issues of, like, movement or anything like that? No. I'm actually very happy with that and what kind of a crazy tag game they're making. And I'm much happier that this is a tag game than a 1v1 game. And the other huge point of praise that I got to throw out is that I love the interface. I don't know if we're going to be seeing much of the character select just yet, but it's great. It's got a simple style. It uses quote-unquote "let's go" as a primer and like a jumping point for your characters and the character select screen. The music sounded great. The visuals on the backgrounds and stages, as well as the characters themselves, is pretty much what I wanted a Marvel vs. Capcom to be since forever, bro. And I think they've nailed the art style. They've come up with something that's like very much in between what ArcSys does and, you know, other proper 2D fighting games. And I think they've done a fantastic job on the more polished characters, especially with like Echo, Ari, and Darius. So I think the best looking character in the game right now is Echo. I just can't believe how great his secondary animations are and the way everything feels and looks. It's so good. And Darius has a huge amount of weight and impact to his attacks. I am not concerned about how dope the characters are going to look in this game and how they're going to feel, because so far with every single character that has been playable, man, they have nailed it. It's very exciting, and the good part is that the devs were super open to feedback. Granted, this is going to be a big esports game eventually, and we know that, but they have been saying time and time again that we have to make a great game first before it's becoming an esport. So they get it. It's obvious that these devs understand that they're looking for like high-level feedback even at this point in the game, where they're still figuring out systems and how things work, and we were able to be honest and truthful about how we felt about a lot of this stuff. And yeah, the defense seemed to be one of the things that kept popping up every once in a while when we were talking to people and how the game sort of plays. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how all this stuff rolls out. Do not anticipate we're going to be seeing this thing coming out anytime soon, and they are still figuring out the core system mechanics, if not obviously what the heck the roster and all that stuff is going to be, which is going to be super exciting in the future. Anyway, I can't keep talking your guys' ear off. There's going to be so much more footage and even more stuff that I can talk about at a later date, so stay tuned. We'll be covering Project L extensively and also checking out how things are going to go down at EVO, because there's probably going to be a whole bunch of new information and things to see, so I can't wait for that. So stay tuned, guys. I'll be back with more Project L information and news as soon as possible if we do get more footage and things like that. Thanks a ton for leaving a comment or a thumbs up on this video. As you know, it helps out the channel a ton, and thank you guys for checking out my Project L first impressions, which is crazy to say considering how long we've been following this game. Until then, my name is Max, and I'll see you guys next time.
Nailed it.